think I was shaving, getting ready to go to the premiere of Meatballs, and I thought, Cheech and Chong join the Army. That would be a pretty good idea. Pitched Paramount the day of the Meatballs premiere. I said, Cheech and Chong join the Army. They said, fine, green light.
We were in Toronto, Ivan was in Los Angeles, and we would read him scenes over the phone, and he would give us notes.
And I met with Cheech and Chong's manager, sent him the script. He said, this is a very funny script. I'm sure they'd like to do it. I said, okay, so let's make a deal.
They basically wanted to own Ivan if we did the script, so it wasn't going to happen. So Ivan said, well, let's change the two characters. And so we made it into basically Bill and Harold.
And I thought maybe one of the ways to get Bill Murray into this movie was to involve Harold. I said, look, I'll put Harold in as your partner, and he'll help write the part to make it more suitable for the two of you guys.
Ivan called me and said, I'm doing a military comedy. And so now I'd written 2 films for Ivan, Animal House and Meatballs, or co-written them.
I never was nervous that it wasn't going to be a hit. It may be foolish, but it just, everything felt right.
One of the things that makes me really proud about Stripes is the cast. I mean, with the exception of Bill Murray, and this was his second movie, and he had been on Saturday Night Live for about a year, the cast was absolutely unknown.
I screen tested for Columbia, and they hated my screen test. And then Ivan said, well, forget it, I'm hiring him anyway.
It was Harold Ramis' first movie. It was John Candy's first American film. Judge Reinhold was making his first appearance in this movie as well. I think he came in with sort of this long, goofy hair, and he plays Elmo. And Elmo was really the compendium of all the best Cheech and Chong jokes from the original script that we had created for that duo.
Preparing Elmo, it wasn't a real stretch for me because I was voted most likely to overdose in my own high school.
I could see right away he had sort of really natural timing.
I felt like I had a handle on the character, but as soon as I walked onto that set the first day, all of that went completely out the window. I was petrified. I was terrified. All I could think about was I could be bagging groceries right now.
He was funny and handsome and cute, and it was obvious to me that he really, really knew what he was doing.
This was a big deal for me. Not only was this a big job, my first real job, it was my first big studio extravaganza.
This is also Sean Young's first movie. I think she had been in a student movie, and she just did a wonderful job.
Karen Ray was the casting person. She just looked at me and she said, come back. I didn't have to read, I didn't have to do anything. And she said, come back, and here's what you'll read when you come back. She just based on how I looked.
She was, I think, a really perfect companion to Harold, and as a good sort of foil for PJ Soles, who ends up playing Bill's girl.
I remember when PJ came in. We did a test with her because we were having trouble. It's a tough part.
I met with Harold Ramis, who I'd never met before. I think I sat in a room for about a half hour and just went over lines with him. We were just laughing hysterically. And I don't even remember what scene it was, but then they put it on tape, and Ivan was laughing the whole time, and Harold, I had such a good feeling. And I thought, wow, this seems pretty good, And then the guy took me back to the airport, and I said goodbye, and he said, I have a feeling I'm going to be picking you up real soon.
This was John Deal's first movie. I don't think he even auditioned before this movie, as far as I know. He had just come to Los Angeles from somewhere in the South.
It was a big deal because it was really the first thing my first paying job.
Larroquette comes in, this big, lumbering, attitude-filled guy.
He had this wonderful bravura quality to him that would make for a fabulous sort of peacock-like captain that he ends up playing.
When I, got the job, it was just another job. Obviously, you don't have any future eyes in this sort of world, so you didn't think about anything except that I was going to get paid to go act in a far-off place, like Kentucky.
Warren Oates, what an extraordinary professional, experienced actor. I wanted someone who, just as soon as you looked at him, you got the whole story. Playing Sergeant Hulka, the drill sergeant of this misfit team. I just wanted someone that we recognized and loved and respected, and this was Warren Oates. From the great westerns that he did, like, The Wild Bunch. Here's a man you knew you couldn't trifle with, that was really, really strong, was really confident as well in his own way, and was going to be able to control this bunch. The first time I worked with Bill, which was in his first movie called Meatballs, and he was really not known yet. He was coming into Saturday Night Live.
He was Bill Murray. I mean, he's always been a rather enigmatic fellow, I think, and a very private fellow.
Bill was the guy who liked to walk on the street and just bellow out loud, "Watch out, there's a lobster loose."
I mean, he's physical when you look at, like Caddyshack, and I mean, he's got great comic chops as far as his body is concerned. But there's something just about his eyes that, I mean, he's an insane man probably deep down, and in another century he'd be locked up.
He was the man, He was the tits.
There's nobody like Bill. There really isn't. You always had to be on your toes with Bill because you never knew what was real and what was kidding around.
I was shaking when I went up and very lamely said, "Hi, Bill. My name is Judge, and I really enjoy your work." And immediately he went like this. He took my face in his hands and he went, "Does that bother you? Does that bother you when I do that?"
John Cleese once said that it's not as funny watching a man go crazy as it is watching a man watch a man go crazy. And Harold was that man we were watching. So we became the audience through Harold to Bill's antics, which is perfect.
I'd already demonstrated that I could write for Bill, and I had already directed him in Caddyshack. And now he saw I could act with him, that we were actually a good team and that he could trust me on screen.
That was a critical casting choice because you needed somebody that could bounce off and work with Bill and not feel that he was going to outdo you.
You just watch the way the two characters work with each other.
It's that kind of humor that only old friends can do.
I think I did some of my best work as, Bill's muse. I was there to, whisper in Bill's ear, "Let's say this, why don't you try this," and plenty of scenes were, major improvisational scenes in that movie.
Every scene has new things improvised into it.
It didn't have improv built into it when we got there. It only had that once Bill showed up.
And I can't really recall now where the line is between what was written, a lot of which was written, and what was just created on the set.
But if you have actors who are the source, then it's a spring that just keeps bubbling up with, "Oh, let's try this," or "Here's an idea," or "Let's try that."
Who wrote the script? I'm not even sure.
The whole time was so exuberant because we were ad-libbing left and right and things were working. A lot of it was working.
The scene that defined Stripes for me was the introductory scene where all the platoon members introduce themselves.
We're telling the stories about why we joined the Army and stuff like that.
I remember John Candy worrying and looking at it and not thinking that it was going to work. Nobody was really satisfied with their own introductions in that scene.
We just said, we're going to go out to the trailer, and we did, and we went and kicked back and relaxed, and I came up with something to say.
I almost had a heart attack.
I said, we have to have a real argument here. We have to have your character, Warren, in which you finally establish yourself as the top dog here and as the sergeant.
Wow, this is a great scene. It's not funny, but it's great. On the set, I remember it going, whoa, this is a performance I haven't seen Bill do. That was Ivan at the top of his game, and it was just great.
That could have been, on the waterfront. When you've got somebody like Warren Oates in front of you, that's just this dynamo of reality. If you've got any talent in you to be in the moment, you can't help but be there with somebody like that.
It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it allowed me to get away from the humor of the stuff and be able to play a scene, relatively truthfully and legitimately for its emotional value. I pulled a couple of the guys aside and I said, "You know what, on this take, why don't you just grab Oates and just bring him down on the mud and let's see what happens."
We were supposed to just pull him down into the mud.
And I didn't tell Warren Oates about it.
He wanted a genuine reaction from Warren Oates. Well, that was a big mistake.
So they grab him, they do the take, and somehow his front tooth got chipped.
And Warren popped up out of the mud and stuck his bridge back in. And I think he addressed Ivan and he said,
"Look, I'm a professional. I know how to do this. If you want me to go down in the mud, I'm going down in the mud. But you tell me about it. You don't pull that cheap improvisational crap on me.
I've been in this game too long to put up with horse like that."
I'll do anything you ask me to do as an actor. I don't, whatever it is, I'll do it, but just tell me first.
And we were, oh my God. The only one that had the nerve to giggle was Bill, We were horrified.
You don't do that to Warren Oates. I think Ivan, gathered that and didn't do it again.
It was like two different eras clashing. The Animal House era and the Wild Bunch era, and it didn't work at all.
John Candy we knew from Toronto. Ivan said, look, let's just hire him in the movie. We don't think we auditioned him.
He had just this ability to be very warm, very kind, at the same time ironic and sarcastic.
And it was fun to see him have to do all the, the boot camp stuff. He was actually quite a physical specimen. He was big, but he was a real athlete.
He was a sweet and humble person that was bent.
He was just an amazing, big-hearted, wonderful guy.
Every night he would ask everybody to come over. He'd make these huge pasta dinners. I'm like, are you tired? What are you doing? He goes, no, I'm going to cook for everybody.
You'd have like the groundskeeper, Warren Oates, a farmer from the area.
We had to move fast, and it was great that we had the Army cooperation.
There's no one better than the Army to have them manage the infrastructure of where the tanks are and all that sort of stuff.
One of the amazing things about Stripes is that we got the Department of Defense's cooperation in doing it.
This was a project that obviously probably somebody had to be convinced of, and Danny probably did that convincing.
I wrote these great letters where I would not let them turn us down.
And it was, again, the time was different. I mean, I don't think you could do that today.
We had to be in our rooms at night alone and studying our lines for the next day and basically, fending off all the calls of people wanting to take us out.
There were like two camps. There were like who was in love with Sean and who was in love with PJ.
Did he just call you? Yeah, he called me too. Oh, man.
Endless conversations. It was like Betty or Veronica, are you a Betty kind of guy or are you a Veronica kind of guy,
Comedy is so subtle. Sometimes it's just shifting 2 or 3 words in a particular sentence that takes it from being an okay humorous line to one that's remembered forever.
I have no idea what makes comedy work. You're looking at the monitor, you have the headphones on, people are performing, and if you're laughing, it works.
The difference between drama and comedy being that drama is ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, and comedy is extraordinary people in ordinary circumstances.
Comedy is not for cowards.
It's confidence. It's the ability to know not to be worried about what's coming out of your mouth, the ability to take the passion that's in your body and this odd sort of synapse in your brain, twist the line, and somehow it comes out sounding funnier out of their mouths than it does coming out of most people's.
The scene in the carpool where Bill is addressing the troops was a flag-waving scene. There was a little bit of humor in it, but it was really about marshaling the troops.
We're American soldiers. We've been kicking ass for 200 years. We're 10-1. Yeah. 10-1, I thought was the real capper to that speech.
He took the speech and turned it into something that was, an unbelievably memorable speech.
The great thing about the Army is they do listen to orders and they know how to get themselves organized, and they can move in sort of an appropriate fashion in a very quick and organized way.
The military was very, very helpful with the parade. They marshaled their troops well.
We had been sort of working and choreographing this sort of wonderful dance routine that our recruits do, and you can see that they're really doing it. I think that's one of the things that is so wonderful for an audience. And so I just threw them into the real thing.
We were all serious about the rifle drill. We were real proud of that drill.
We spent a lot of time on the choreography of that thing, that's the Fat Jack, out there doing the rifle stuff.
It was a hilarious combination of drill instructors, riflery instructors, and Hollywood choreographers of questionable sexual orientation. Okay, you get the picture, right? These people had to work together, and that in itself was really priceless.
We knew always in the writing that was the sort of second act curtain. How are we going to top this? And we figured the only way to top it is to actually have a war.
Ivan thought we needed some life and death circumstance, and for him, the Russians were the perfect thugs.
What you try to do as a director is create a situation that in itself makes sense to the story, and then allows in the sort of emotional interaction of all the characters.
Ivan was a great conductor. I mean, he would see something in a take that maybe wasn't there before, and then he would just tell you, embellish that. Go a little more with that, bring it out a little more.
It's not like they could improvise and do whatever they wanted to. It was like focusing the script so that it was most appropriate to the moment at hand.
He was very fond of just getting us out there, and we'd try the script, and him going, "Come on, come on, guys, come on, we can do better than that," or literally just saying, "Make me laugh," and sitting back behind the camera and waiting for us to get funny.
He always looks for that extra stuff that obviously wasn't in the script.
I quickly developed a technique of having the work with the actors during rehearsal and on the set on a daily basis be part of the writing process.
He knew that he had players who had chops, who could create and improve the product.
He gave us a lot of latitude. He really did.
Part of the work in these scenes is when something is good, to grab onto it and hold onto it for dear life, and to make sure that I could get into the best stuff by doing coverage, by sort of remembering the good line, by remembering the good piece of business, and then, refining it and making it so that it's a scene, not an improv.
I watch Ivan control Sherman tanks, helicopters, huge companies of soldiers. The only thing that he could never control in any way would be Bill Murray.
You had somebody in charge of the operation in Ivan who knew exactly what to do and knew exactly when not to do anything, except let the camera roll and let these guys do what they do best.
It's supposed to be a comedy. No one can die. We just fired off a lot of rounds, made a lot of noise.
Ivan was really ready for this movie. You could just feel him just getting into the directing form and he was so comfortable directing this movie.
I'd like to think that Stripes works for a lot of reasons.
You had a classic structure of the underdog overcoming obstacles.
It's just turned into one of those movies of just one of those favorite American movies.
It was a wonderful experience.
It's one of those beer commercial guy films.
A comic language that was exactly perfect for its day.
When people know, oh, you wrote and produced Stripes? So cool. That's one of my favorite movies. It makes me happy.
Stripes was like an internship into comedy.
That was the best class I ever took.
For me, a golden age.
We were young horses. I mean, you couldn't stop us from running.
And I hear a lot of people say it's one of their favorite Bill Murray movies.
Ready to report for duty.
Wow. What can you say?
It was the film that sort of matured my relationship with really people that would become part of my family.
That's the message of Stripes. You take care of people. Let's take care of each other.